You are very good at it. That is the problem. You have been doing it for so long that you do it without thinking, without effort, almost without noticing, and yet something in you is always slightly off key. Not broken, not wrong, simply not quite right. You have been excellent at a life that does not fit. There is a name for what this costs. Welcome to power and myth. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that has no name in ordinary language. It is not the tiredness of too much work or too little sleep. It is the exhaustion of someone who has been performing competently in a role that was never theirs. You have met the expectations. You have played the part well enough that people around you do not question it. Perhaps you have played it well enough that you do not question it either. And yet there is a quality to your days that does not add up, a flatness beneath the accomplishment, a silence where there should be aliveness. You are doing the right things, but the right things are producing the wrong feeling. This is what happens when a Sigma INFJ is living the wrong archetype. Jungian psychology gives us a precise word for the face we show to the world, the persona. It is the mask worn in the social world, the version of the self shaped by what was required, rewarded, and allowed. For most people, the persona is a manageable performance, but for INFJs, the persona is far more costly, because INFJs do not wear their persona lightly. They inhabit it. They bring their full cognitive depth to whatever role they have taken on. When the role is the right one, this depth becomes an extraordinary presence. When the role is the wrong one, this depth becomes an instrument working against itself. The wrong archetype is not always chosen consciously. Usually it is assigned. You discovered early that someone needed healing, and you became the healer. You discovered that belonging required constant adaptation, and you became the shapeshifter. You discovered that being seen was dangerous, and you became the hermit before you were ready, before the withdrawal was chosen rather than forced. These are not failures of self-knowledge. They are the natural response of a highly perceptive mind to an environment that requires something specific from you. The tragedy is not that you took on the wrong archetype. The tragedy is how long you stayed. Years. Sometimes a decade or two. Sometimes longer. Consider what it looks like when a Sigma INFJ, whose true archetype is the Seer, has been living for years within the wounded healer. On the surface it is invisible. The care they offer is genuine. The attunement to other people's pain is real. They are not pretending to feel what they feel. But the Seer's primary orientation is not toward other people's wounds. It is toward pattern and truth. And a Seer who has organized their life around healing finds themselves doing something quietly devastating. They are using their perceptive capacity not to see what is real, but to anticipate what others need. The gift is still operating, but it has been redirected, turned outward when its nature is inward. And the Seer begins to feel, gradually, invisibly, like someone who has been reading the wrong book for years and only now is beginning to sense that the story does not match the life they were meant to understand. The exhaustion here is specific. It is not the burnout of overwork. It is the burnout of misdirection, of a deep faculty being used for something it was not built to sustain. Or consider the INFJ whose true archetype is the Hermit, but who has spent years living as the Shapeshifter. The Shapeshifter is the one who translates between worlds, who learns the language of every room they enter, who makes others comfortable by reading what is needed and becoming it. For a time this is survivable. For a time it even produces a kind of satisfaction. The Shapeshifter, who is actually a hermit at their core, is still perceptive, still attuned, still capable of the extraordinary social navigation the Shapeshifter role requires, but beneath it a cost is accumulating. The hermit's fundamental orientation is towards solitude, not as rest, but as work. The inner world is not a retreat from the outer one. It is the primary one. And a hermit who has been performing as the Shapeshifter for years has been in essence living outside. Always outside, never allowed to come in. The performance continues, the mask holds, and underneath it something very old and very necessary is going without what it needs. This is not a metaphor. In Jungian psychology, the dominant function deprived of expression does not simply go quiet. It develops what Jung called an inferior function complex, a pressure that builds in the psyche until it forces expression in some other form, usually one that is neither chosen nor welcome. The seer who has not been allowed to see erupts into sudden, certain pronouncements that others find uncomfortable and disproportionate. The hermit who has not been allowed to withdraw collapses inward in ways that look from the outside like depression or disappearance. The psyche is not punishing you, it is correcting. But when correction comes without understanding, it can look like failure. What makes the wrong archetype so difficult to identify is that it does not feel entirely foreign. The 7 INFJ archetypes are not 7 separate personalities. They are 7 expressions of the same underlying nature. Every Sigma INFJ carries the seed of all of them. A seer who has been living as the healer still heals genuinely. A hermit who has been living as a shapeshifter still adapts with real skill. The competence is not false, the gifts are not manufactured. But there is a difference between using a gift and being governed by it. There is a difference between moving through an archetype and being trapped inside one that does not belong to your center. The years that are lost are not wasted in any simple sense. They build something, they teach something, but they also cost something that cannot be fully accounted for until you begin to ask the question, is this the archetype I was always living, or is this the one I learned to perform? Jung understood the persona as necessary but dangerous. Necessary because we all need a face for the social world. Dangerous because the persona can become confused with the self. He observed something striking. The more successfully a person inhabits a social role, the greater the risk that the role becomes more real to them than the psyche beneath it. This is the shadow mechanism that operates beneath the wrong archetype. When a Sigma INFJ is living the wrong archetype, the shadow is not the darkness they have suppressed. The shadow is the archetype they actually are, growing in the dark. The seer who has been performing as the healer finds the seer emerging in uncomfortable ways, in unsolicited truths, in sudden withdrawals from relationships that have become transactional, in a growing intolerance for the surface-level care that the healer role demands. The true archetype does not disappear. It accumulates. From the inside, this accumulation looks like restlessness, a low-frequency sense that you are somewhere you should not be, doing something you should not still be doing. Not unhappiness exactly, more like watching a clock move and knowing that it is measuring the wrong kind of time. Sigma INFJs living the wrong archetype often describe a specific quality of tiredness. They can continue indefinitely, but continuing costs more than it should. They are not running out of capacity, they are running out of reasons. This is the shadow wound of the wrong archetype. It does not destroy you. It simply exhausts the version of you that was never supposed to carry this weight. And because the exhaustion is low-level and chronic rather than acute, it can be misread for years as a character flaw. You assume you are not committed enough, not resilient enough, not grateful enough for what you have built. You do not consider the possibility that you have built it in the wrong direction. The Jungian term for the work of separating the self from the persona is individuation. It is the central project of the second half of life in Jung's framework, though for Sigma INFJs, the call to individuation often arrives earlier and more urgently. Introverted intuition, the dominant cognitive function of the INFJ, is precisely the function that perceives patterns, including the pattern of a life that is moving in the wrong direction. You have always known something was not quite right. The question was whether you trusted that knowing. The years lived inside the wrong archetype are, in this sense, also the years that built the pressure required to ask the real question. The hermit who spent a decade in the noise of the shapeshifter's life knows the hermit's withdrawal with a specificity they could not have arrived at any other way. The seer who spent years caring rather than perceiving knows what it costs to suppress the true function, and will not suppress it again. The wound is real, but so is what the wound teaches. You are very good at it. You have always been very good at it. And now you are standing within the same competence, the same performance, and seeing it differently. Not the role, the cost of the role. The specific, accumulated cost of being someone whose deepest nature has been pointing in a different direction, whilst your life pointed in this one. This is not a reason for grief, though grief is a natural part of what comes next. This is a reason for orientation. You now have a question that has teeth. Which archetype have I been living, and which one is mine? These are not always opposites, but they are not always the same. The Sigma INFJ, who recognizes the wrong archetype, does not need to demolish what has been built. They need to understand the direction, to feel for the pull that has always been there beneath the performance. That pull is the true archetype. It has been patient, it has been accumulating, and it is not too late. If something in this video named a tiredness you have been carrying without language for it, please tell me in the comments. Which archetype have you been living? Which one do you suspect is waiting? Subscribe to Power and Myth if you want to keep asking the questions that actually matter. Until next time, find your power, know your myth,